Blog Talk Radio.
Enlightenment comes from allowing yourself to journey through the dark shadow of death, the primordial abyss of wisdom's waters. For it is the treasures and mysteries that lie waiting in the dark that transform us and propel us to a new enlightened state. One should never aspire to live in the light nor the dark, but should journey between the two in order to evolve the overall reality into a self-actualized creation. Knowledge is your light, as wisdom is your darkness. The bold interplay of the two in your life leads you to an enlightened understanding of yourself and the inner verse you've created. Male is your enlightenment. Female is your transformation. Child is your evolution. Woman, accept the light into your darkness, so it may enlighten you. Man, go bring your light boldly into the darkness so that it may transform you. Enlightenment and transformation.
Greetings. I am Haruya Hassan Anu, and in this session, we're going to be discussing the mind state necessary and foundational when entering ritual activity, and even the mind state that should be supporting the act of praying or affirming for a desired outcome. Now, firstly, what we're going to be looking at is really answering a question that I'm sure has crossed everyone's mind at some point, or at least you may have even verbalized, and that question being, why is it that my rituals do not work or are not working? Or why is it that my prayers are not being answered? Well, this question comes up often. People ask me, especially after they may have worked with someone who may have given them some work to do. You know, you could have gotten a reading and you were told to burn a certain type of candle or to wear a certain type of oil, make a certain type of offering, and there would be, you know, the outcome that you desired, but then you perform all of those acts and nothing occurs, at least to the visible eye, the physical eye. Nothing occurs in alignment with what you're asking for or you desire or you may need. Okay, the first thing to understand is that the energy that you go into your rituals with is the energy that the ritual will amplify. Okay, so if you go into a ritual or prayer or affirmation with the energy that this may not work, it won't work, or I'm only doing this just in case, then that's actually the type of ashe or vigor that's going to be on that particular action or that particular ritual. So if you go into a ritual with low vibrations, then the ritual now itself has low vibrations. So one of the things that are done often when people are doing ritual work is that they'll do a series of mantras or they'll play certain music. In the Voodoo pantheon, you do a lot of dancing and you do things to bring you into a higher state of awareness and, more importantly, a higher vibration. And doing that first, you're able to invoke the particular energies that you need to work with greater accuracy. People often, they fail or they neglect to see the importance of greater intellectual awareness as it pertains to doing spiritual work. I know it seems like it's two separate fields of awareness and perception when you're dealing with the intellect and when you're dealing with the spirit, but they are actually, they speak and they work hand in hand with one another. You may have a spiritual or emotional experience, but it's your intellect that serves as that cosmic gateway of defining what that experience is, as well as documenting it so that you can engage it, re-invoke it, and recreate it again. So one of the things that I see often, and sometimes I have to even kind of warn students and clients about, is the lack of research and study as it pertains to your spiritual walk. Some people kind of get addicted to meditating and dancing and giving offerings. And that's good. That's one part of it. But you also want to create a paradigm where you're now having a more intelligent conversation with those spirits and those entities that you're looking to work with. So study is critical. Study is very important. Having or showing the commitment to those energies that you're looking to work with will cause them to want to work with you more, but also to have a higher level of dialogue and results. So if you're looking to work with Oshun or you're looking to work with Oya, then you should do the proper study on Oshun and Oya. So that way when they start expressing themselves to you in their various forms, you're already familiar. Or more importantly, they can express themselves to you in their various forms because you familiarized yourself with those various forms. So now they can speak a larger breadth of language to you. So that's a key thing. Also, by you working consistently in terms of trying to evolve yourself, involve your current position in the cosmos, your current position in glory. And when I say glory, I'm speaking about your divine position or your divine emanation that you give off of yourself. We learned about this in the broadcast dealing with the Ori. When you learn to really work with that, evolve it, and grow it, what happens is that you become more attractive and apparent to the spirit world. Because as I've said before, spirits live in darkness, so they only see your light. Well, what is your light? Your light is your alchemical activity that's currently occurring inside of your body. Now, some people, they suppress their alchemical activity. All right. And Al, we know, is a definitive article referring to the divine, or what some would call as God, such as Allah. And we know Kim is where we get black. So alchemical, we're dealing with the black sciences of the Almighty. This goes back to our Odudua broadcast when we were dealing with the black aspects of the Almighty, or the divine, or the all in all. So when you are raising up your intellectual and your spiritual and genetic station in the universe, you become more apparent to those energies that you're looking to work with. For those who come and view this particular work or spiritual work as just a financial transaction, and they say, okay, well, I'll just pay someone, or I'll buy certain supplies from a spiritual store, give those, and I'm fine. You'll find that you'll consistently be doing rituals and they're not working. Well, one of the reasons is because a person who's coming with such a low vibration or with such dim light actually has to go through more work to invoke those spirits, because ultimately they cannot see you, nor can they hear you. If you could imagine that a spirit is living within triple stage darkness, then what would allow that spirit to see you is the light of the Almighty, or the light of God, all right, or the light of your spirit. That is what redeems an entity from triple stage darkness. So now if you're coming into a ritual or a situation or a ceremony experience and you're bringing no light, no evolution into that experience, then you have to work all the much harder to get those entities to pay attention to you, if they will at all. And even if they do, then what you're actually receiving is the lower aspects of who and what they are, as opposed to the higher aspects that deal with you when you're vibrating more in that guru mind state, or above the heart chakra, okay, which is saying vibrating above your earthly reality. When you're able to do that and you're doing that consistently, now you're moving elbow to elbow with them, and they're more inclined and quicker to respond to the symbols that you are putting forth in your ritual. When we have instances, many of us who are in some of the, Santeria, Lukumi, Candomblé, Yoruba tradition, or Orisha tradition, you'll find that a lot of times you're asked, or you're told, to go outside of your own chi matrix or your own ashe matrix to borrow ashe from another being. This is sometimes called ebo, and you have this in all of the traditional, or all of our traditions, the indigenous traditions. There's some form of sacrifice that occurs, and sometimes that sacrifice is a time sacrifice, or fruit, water, or it's always going to be an element of some sort. Whatever the energy is that particular sacrifice has, that will also determine the level of light that these entities are able to observe and see. So sometimes a person's light is so low that the light that's inside of a chicken is actually illuminating spiritually, in a spiritual way, even brighter than a human's is. Because that chicken or that goat or that turtle or that duck or that pigeon is probably more obedient to its nature than you may be. Now, the problem is when you're working with certain people, they may not tell you that the reason that you're experiencing the difficulty that you're currently experiencing is because you're simply functioning outside of your nature. And when you function outside of your nature, you become less visible to your spirit help, because they work on the quality and the power of your word and presentation. So if you're living a lie and then you go and you pray and you affirm a certain reality, the same spirit entities don't know if you're lying this time, because now the power of your word and your intention has been diminished and your light is lower. So not only can they not see you, they do not know when to take whatever it is that you say as truth or if it's more fiction. So what happens is you'll go to someone and have them do the work for you, and they'll borrow the light or the ashe or the ojiji from another entity that is more obedient to its nature. One of the entities that we have that I often note as a perfect symbol of obedience is the sun. The sun always does its job. It always commits itself to the work that it has to do. And it's one of the greatest offerings that you can even give to the spiritual entities that you're working with, is the power, the energy of the sun, whether it be through through fire, whether it be through plants. A lot of times we're told to bring herbs and we're told to bring flowers in our ritual work, because those beings, they trap the power of the sun inside of them. And then through certain invocations or certain processes, even just by making them essential oils, getting the essence out of those herbs or flowers, you unleash the power of the sun in them. And of course, when you're dealing with plant life, you have wind, you have soil, earth, you have water, and you have sun. So they're a more complete being. But getting back to why oftentimes your rituals don't work, is because your light is so low, for one. So you're not attracting the entities that you think you are. You may be attracting lesser entities. We have artificial spirits that sometimes come and will pose as the entities that you're looking to interact with. So you may go by the train tracks to go speak to Ogun, and then all of a sudden you feel a total strength of, a total feeling of strength and ferocity overcome you, and you make the assumption that it's Ogun because of how it feels, without realizing that your experience is not necessarily the reality of your interaction with these entities. Sometimes because of our religious backgrounds, for some of us coming from certain places, we're used to an experience in our spirituality. And if we don't receive an experience, or we don't feel this great flooding in of emotion and of power and of ashe and presence, then we feel like we're not in the presence or doing the work. The greatest feeling, or more so knowing, that you can have in your rituals is that whatever I'm doing is effective. My power is strong. My magic works. My magic is effective. My rituals work. My rituals are effective. My offerings have been received, and they will do what I sent them out to do. That is the most strongest mind state that you can go in with, as opposed to looking for a feeling to wipe over you or wash over you. And then when that doesn't occur, you feel like nothing happened, so you bring down the vibration of the actual ceremony or the actual ritual. So the desire and the search for a somatic experience, something that you can taste, smell, hear, or feel, something that's somatic, is what will destroy your potential for a real honest to goodness experience, spiritual experience. And again, keeping dirty blood will block your ability to receive the transmissions that are being sent from spiritual entities, from your guardian angels, because of the way that they operate and they communicate with you. So when your body temple is filthy and your blood is filthy, then they have difficulty communicating with you, because remember, your ancestors are the empathetic link to the cosmos, meaning this is where you have an entity somewhere that can empathize with you and for you. As I've said many times, the Orisha or the Netir or the Lawal, these are indifferent energy matrix. They're not sitting somewhere crying for you or wishing the best for you or pulling for you. It doesn't work that way. These are just polarities, and you have to know how to invoke and bring forth those various polarities by your ability to give off a certain vibration. One of the rituals that I do with people who come to me sometimes, because for those who work with me, you know that I'm not big on initiations without education. Some people are running around and they want their lekes really bad, or they want to be able to call themselves priests, they want to be able to call themselves priestesses, but they don't know anything. So they go through these ceremonies, they spend a lot of money, they get their Orisha pots, or they get scratched in to a house, and to only find out that they've had an experience. They felt something, they felt loved, they felt this feeling of maybe even power wash over them, but they don't have an intellectual mind of research and study and scholarship to accompany those feelings, to be able to recreate them without all of the ceremony. So one of the things that I do in order to bring people to a place where they can actually attract and consistently walk in the ashe of the entities that they want to work with, is I do a consecration to those particular entities, which is a much less involved process than a initiation. By doing a consecration, I'll give you an example. If you wanted to attract bears, what you could do is walk through the woods and cover yourself in honey. If you covered yourself in honey, and if, let's say, we know for sure that bears love honey, then you would attract the bears to you, and whatever blessings come from, or curses really, but blessings come from being one that's covered in honey. So if you were to consecrate yourself to Shango, then you will attract the ashe and the gifts of the Shango energy, because now it's dripping off of you. All right. Now, in doing this, which is a much less involved process, and learning about what that Shango matrix is and what to expect to attract to you, what to expect to now to have the ability to defend yourself from, you become better equipped than spending thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars on an initiation that you don't even understand, with a bunch of people who you do not know, and no one is actually teaching you. No one is equipping you. No one is empowering you. So now when you go to do a ritual, you've only ever approached these spirit entities as a student, slave, and servant. So they will treat you as such. They won't take your affirmation seriously, especially if all of your work has been through someone else. I'm not saying that I'm opposed to having teachers, having leaders, having guides, but when one becomes a slave to those teachers, guides, and leaders, you end up giving up your light for someone else. So you become their sacrifice, because they will use your ashe and your light to further their mission. I've seen certain priests where every time they do a ritual for someone, they're giving the offering, but they'll spend 10 minutes praying for themselves, their children, and their Ile, and will pray for you for about 3, and then tell you to say something on your behalf when you really don't know what to say. But they just took 10 to 15 minutes praying, and that was the first fruits of your offering. And you might have spent, $100 in offering or less, and they sucked up all of your energy and your light. Okay, so this is the perfect person who needs to borrow light because theirs is so low. You want to get to the point with your rituals where you can casually say what it is you need to happen without invoking an artificial nature or an artificial voice. That's critical. Remembering that anything that you offer within your ceremonies or ritual is not only for the ashe within that object, but for what it symbolically represents, because ashe expresses itself in various forms. So ashe can represent itself or express itself as a bow and arrow, and you can tell Ochosi you want to use this bow and arrow in order to go and find a solution for you, or a way out of a situation for you. You may find that ashe has expressed itself in the form of a hammer, and you may use that hammer to speak to Ogun, to tell Ogun to reshape a situation that seems to be tough that's in front of you into something that you can use. Or you could even use that same hammer, depending on what kind. Let's say if it's a sledgehammer, and you can speak to Shango, and you could tell Shango to use this hammer and the symbol that it represents to increase your male virility, or just your power. Even if you're a woman, a female, your virility or your power to create, your will to create, and your will to drive forth in an unyielding fashion. Okay, so the symbology of your ritual will help you to actually know what to say by understanding the symbology that you're incorporating into it. This is one of the problems when people get rituals from other people, or they read books, but don't actually take time to study the ingredients and what it is that you're creating. If you're told to use water, or if you're told to use copper, or you're told to use an image of a house in your ritual, it doesn't necessarily mean that that house or the image itself is magical. But what happens is, because the way spirits communicate through symbol, they'll understand what you desire by seeing the house. Okay, so what you want to use when you're having trouble with your rituals really breaking ground and doing what you need them to do, you want to start using more symbology. You can even use the symbology in certain music or the symbology in poetry, because that's the way that spirits communicate with you, and that's the way that's best to communicate with them. Even when you're using your words and you're invoking them with certain mantras or certain words, those also create certain images within your mind, and those images within your mind serve as symbology for those spirits you want to work with. Also knowing that there are a couple things released whenever you speak. There's fire, because your tongue is that flaming sword that we read about in the Bible. That's your tongue. Okay, there's water, because when you speak, there's moisture that comes out of your mouth. And of course, there's air. Okay, so these things that you're sending forth, you are actually sending them forth as offerings unto themselves. So not only are your words invocations, but what's coming out of your mouth, the energy, is actually an offering to give. When your light is high or your vibration is high, almost anything that's on your body can be used as an offering. Your hair, you can give a piece of your own hair. That's carbon for some of us. Your hair is just pure carbon. So you're giving that. You can give your urine, your saliva, blood, your tears. Okay, symbology. Now, what do the tears represent? Is that an offering that we can give to Yemoja? Okay, because there's salt water. So there's so many different things that you can use in terms of symbol to strengthen the power of your ritual. The key piece, of course, being also this, where we oftentimes we get turned around a lot, is we fail to invoke first our own personal power factory, which is our Ori, or our soul, because the Orisha, or the spirit, any spirit you're working with, lives in submission to your own soul, to your Ori. That is the highest entity. So when you want to work with, Yemojao, you want to work with Orisha Oko, or let's say if you want to work with Dada, you first invoke your Ori, because your Ori represents the drive that's necessary in the will to make something happen. But the Ori has no character. Dada has the character for what you need. So by invoking your Ori first, it's like fueling up the tank, and or more so, having the intention to want to go somewhere. The Orisha gives you the vehicle to get there. Which vehicle do I want to take? Now, what is the fuel for that vehicle that it could travel on the roadway? Well, that's the Ashe or the Ojiji that you give it. So for some things, you may need a motorcycle. For some things, you may need a dune buggy. For others, a Cadillac will do, or a limousine will do. But that is a particular shade, that is a particular perspective, or an angle, or as we would say in the Christian paradigm, an angel. All right, which is really angle. Well, what is the fuel, drive, and motivation that goes behind that? That's your Ori, which is will. Your Ori is an all-powerful entity that has no personality, because it's just pure power. Okay? Well, something that's pure power is very difficult to direct unless you give it a pathway to direct it through. Now, depending on the power, the vibration of your Ori, how strong it is, will determine what path you're allowed to take. It's like going to the amusement park, and they always have the sign where you must be this tall to get on this ride. Well, that's how it works with your Ori. You can get on the better rides if you have matured and grown your Ori through your spiritual work. If not, you got to get on the kiddie rides. So what does that mean? You get the lesser road, or the camino, or the path. You get the lesser path of that entity that you want to work with. We all know that when we're dealing with these spirit entities, that there's various paths. Even when you're dealing with Ogun, you have Ogun as the hunter, you have Ogu as the diplomat, the one who carries 2 machetes, the iron smelter. There's various paths, but these paths exist in a hierarchical order. So they're not actually lateral, where they all mean the same thing or have the same ashe associated with them. So what happens is, when you have raised yourself up, your own soul up, and you've enlightened it and enhanced it and invigorated it at a certain level, you can now communicate with the higher paths and get more done. So if you really need to do some heavy lifting, which is usually the rituals we may complain about didn't work. I really need to make this happen. It didn't work. It's because you may be dealing with the lower path, but ultimately it's your Ori, your soul, that provides the gateway, or the final checkpoint, or the commencing checkpoint as to if something is going to happen for you or not. It is Ori that blesses. If you have money, it is because of your Ori. If you have children in abundance, it is because of your Ori. It is not because of the Orisha. It is because of your Ori and the will that your Ori presents. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law is a popular quotation from Aleister Crowley, the well-noted occultist. Well, if you notice, will or wilt is in there, because Your will is everything. Your will is what guides your rituals. Your will is what guides the power of your affirmations. Your will is what guides the power of your own evolution. But also in saying, do what thou wilt, that is the whole of the law, is saying that you have to be your authentic self, what you will do. Sometimes we lose our light and we lose our power through our rituals when we get involved in a certain tradition and we begin to be something quickly other than what we are, without first honoring what we brought to the table. We want to throw everything out and now begin to emulate our teachers or emulate our guides or our spiritual parents, without understanding first that power comes from being your authentic self. That is the whole of the law. And finding out, researching, and studying self. Know thyself, because in knowing thyself, you will know God. That is important. So, as opposed to quitting everything you're doing in order to emulate someone, what you should do is now go on a self-study. Why is it that I have this perception of the Almighty? Why is it that maybe I think I'm the Almighty? Why is it that I like spicy foods and I don't like bitter foods? Why is it like bitter foods don't like spicy? Why do I have a certain affinity for various places throughout the planet that I've never been? But I feel like I have been there. I feel like I live there. Why is it that I like certain music? Should I stop using these types of phrases? Should I stop watching these types of movies? And you go through your list and you determine the whole of who and what you are in your various expressions, and learn how Ashe has expressed itself through your character and your being. Then what you do is you take all of those various expressions and you figure out how to incorporate them within your rituals. So now your rituals become a very natural process. They become a natural adventure. So if you're one who likes to listen to house music, then you figure out a way to use that doom, 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 doom of house music within your ritual. Whether on that one is going to be a mantra, or you're going to pour water on the one, or if it's just something that you're going to see as saying, okay, I'm going to invoke an entity to align me with the oneness of the universe. But you don't throw things out immediately, because you're throwing out your power that your spirit has cultivated without your intellectual mind knowing. Most significantly, spirit is always in control, regardless of what you think you're intellectualizing. You use your intellectual capacity to document the work and the movement of the spirit. So your spirit will lead you to listening to certain things, being around certain types of people. Look at the zodiac signs of the most influential people in your life. That's something you can always do. Look at the astrological signs of the people of your loved ones. You'll start seeing a certain pattern. You don't do away with that. You now determine what it represents and how can you use it. This is one of the ways that you can even determine what Orisha or power walks with you. Okay, so that's a key piece in terms of strengthening the vigor and the power of your ritual. Make your rituals a daily practice based on the things that you practice daily, because the things that you practice daily are rituals anyway. If you know before, whenever you leave the house, you pat your pockets, checking for your keys, your wallet, breath mints, and money. If you know you do that every day in order to make sure you can present yourself to the world a certain way and navigate through the world a certain way, that happens to be a ritual. So figure out ways to even ritualize that, so that becomes now a spiritual practice. You got to remember, our ancients didn't have religion. That came later. They just had a culture, a way of doing things, and they made sure that they infused a spiritual culture within everything that they did. So there never had to be an artificial time where they had to get together in a building and say, okay, now we're going to be this in this moment. They made sure they were that in every moment. So when it came time to go and do a ritual, it was like second nature, because they were already in that mode. So that's a key piece for you to keep in mind when you're working with certain entities or you're trying out these different rituals. and you're wondering why you're not seeing the effects that you'd like to see. Also, sometimes you won't see the effects that you'd like to see because you don't believe that you really are deserving of those effects, or you're too scared of actually receiving what it is that you desire. Some people will do certain spiritual work, like I said, as a safety net. If all else fails, let me just try this, or at least I'm casting my net in every direction. Well, that's not planned, it's not deliberate, and that's not actually going to work. There are various nets that you need to cast. Sure, you need to make sure you're intellectually covered. You need to make sure that whenever you do a ritual, that you're not doing a ritual to perform an action that you wouldn't perform in the spiritual yourself. Don't do anything cowardly and expect the results. If you're not willing to do it in the physical, then the spirit is not going to do it, because remember, the spirit controls the physical. So if you haven't made up in your mind or in your body that this is something that I would do, that means your spirit hasn't made it up yet either. And if your spirit hasn't made it up, then your soul or your Ori has not made up that decision yet. Therefore, it's not going to work because your soul or your Ori has not sanctioned it. So if you're not at the place where you would do that, leave it alone, because you're wasting your time, energy, your money. Doing rituals is important though, because it puts you in the place of those spirit entities that you're actually working with. When you're doing a ritual with Eshu or Ilegba or Ganesha, what's actually happening, because remember, these are thought projections from you, Ganesha is doing the ritual to and for himself. Alright? Loki or Pan is doing the ritual to and for himself. Erzuli is doing the ritual to and for herself when you're doing these particular rituals. So going back to the checklist, of course, mentally, intellectually, make sure you're covered. Make sure emotionally, your emotions are leading you in a direction to motivate the spirits that you want to work with. Because your emotions, remember, they're energy in motion, emotion. They are the ones that are directing and driving the spirits to actually wake up. That's why when we start praying or do rituals or we dance, you find that it's usually pretty emotional. When it's not, then sometimes things don't occur as we would want them to occur. Spirits are moved by emotion and they're attracted by your light. So spiritually, you have to make sure that you are in proper alignment with what your soul is calling for. Okay? Emotionally, you have to make sure. Intellectually, you have to make sure. And depending on the situation, sometimes even legally, you have to make sure that you know what you're doing. And I don't mean man's law. That's not what I'm speaking about. Okay? I'm speaking about the cosmic law and the natural law, which is the difference. Okay? Because a lot of times man's law will suppress the spirit, because that's what its intent is to do. Okay? So with that said, this is a part one, and I'm going to get further into this as well as give you a set of rituals that you can do, but I want to prep you first. So just walk with me through this process. I'm going to prep you so that way when you enter into your ritual work, you have the right mind in order to actually make it happen. It's one of the things that I work with my students, is to get them to have the mind of the magician, or the mind of the Awo, the mind of the Mambo, or the Ugan, or the Babalao, and ultimately the mind of the spirit entity and beyond. The greatest ritual you could ever do is to ask, or more so, proclaim, because it has to do this when you do this, to a spirit entity to open up its wisdom to you. It has to do that. It can't turn you down. When you begin to do that, then you begin to take on the mind characteristics and spirit quality of that entity. That's what the consecrations are about that I do with people, so that you can now take on the mind of that entity in order to take on the power of that entity. But ultimately, your move is to go even beyond that entity and walk within your Ori, which is full self-actualization, or as I like to say, just being who you are, just doing you. That is the place of the Ori. You use the various shades of consciousness of these spirit entities, guardian angels, Risha Lawal, so forth and so on, and Kisis, in order to get you to that point. Each one serves as a different formula for you to be able to climb up the ladder of your own chakras back home to your divine self. Okay? So, again, I thank you for listening, and be sure to head over to Orisha Religion SeduluHouse.com as well as SeduluHouse.com. Shoot me an email for those who are interested in taking classes. This next series is going to be pretty much completely online. Okay, so which will be easier for me. It would allow me to actually up the level of my own personal scholarship, so I have more to deliver to you by not doing them locally, which is normally how we do them. And things are changing. This is Ogun. You got to use the technology of Ogun. You know, I have a lot of you who've reached out from remote places in order to get involved with the classes, and this is how we're going to do it this time around. We'll most likely be starting in October. But again, you know, shoot me an email at SeduluHouse.com. You know, go to the contact form and let me know if you're interested in taking classes. So I will definitely send you the information when you're ready